one-time activity. This is an activity which has to be done regularly, like when you review your process, when you review your performances at a regular intervals. You should review your FMEAs regularly to see that what extra failures it can have in the future. Okay, because I have done the assessment maybe till now, but if I forget the FMEA document, I don't know, there might be some failure modes which can happen in the future also. So it is a running sort of a document which can. Now let's talk about why are we using it in a project? What is the purpose of doing it in a project, or what is the purpose of doing it in a Six Sigma training? Why are we doing it? Can someone think of it? I just want to ask from you first and then I'll answer. Can someone think of it? Though I've given an explanation, but what is the purpose of doing this in the...
So there are, like in any project,
So
there
reduce
are
the
a
failure.
lot of ways of having a failure. So there are several failure modes. So which failure mode do we need to prioritize? For that, we measure it on severity, on its occurrence, and in detectability. And then we have these scores, we multiply it to get our this thing.
RPN
index, yeah, RPA index. And
we will discuss that technical. We will discuss that, Ashwini. We will discuss that technical stuff in the upcoming slide, because everybody.
So reduce the failures to interpret the failures and control
Yes.
the failures.
Prioritize which failure modes to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Anybody else wants to give an explanation?
FMEA is done when your process flow is after your process flow you have decided based on your process what are the failure modes. We interpret the failure mode, and we even prioritize based on the occurrence and severity and defect, and then we even plan for the control.
No, control is the next phase.
Why do we do it in the... My question is, why do we do it in the project? Don't give me the technical explanation that we'll be doing it. Just from an intent perspective, what do you think we are doing it in a improved state? Like I haven't discussed it yet, but just want to hear from you. Intent of doing
when we are planning a solution, we are focusing on some solution that needs to be implemented. We also have to understand in implementing the solution, there can be lots of different, drawbacks that might happen. So we need to be prepared for those drawbacks or the negative issues that might crop up in between when we are implementing. So if we are prepared for it and that kind of a situation arises, we will be prepared enough to go ahead and deal with it and go ahead with our solution implementation without any delay or any kind of a problem.
Really appreciate it. Very good explanation. That is the intent of the FME in the improve phase, because when you will deploy certain solutions for the first time, okay, you don't know what sort of failures it can have while implementing it. So before even implementing those solutions, I will assume, I will anticipate that what failure modes can have. Okay. So for example, if you're developing an application, so for example, there was a lot of manual work and there wasn't any app earlier wherein people were doing manual entry. So when you develop an app, which means that you would have certain steps to develop an app. So for each and every step, you will probably have the failure modes. Probably if the application is slow, what should I have in control? Yeah. What if the application has too many people in it together? What should I do? If the application doesn't populate all the results, what should I do? If it doesn't capture the email address, what should I do? So all the failure modes while implementing the solutions is what I will be doing the FMEA for implementing those solutions, because I don't want to take any sort of risk. I don't want to say that since the solution is now implemented, I get a lot of failure and my project timelines get impacted before it. So that's the reason I have 2 months for improve phase to do the FMEA as well. So that is the intent of doing the FMEA. Is it clear to all of you? Although you all were correct, summarized it really well, but still, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Great. I think you have understood it really well. So let me explain technically what is the FMEA. I've just explained it in a very layman terminology without sharing the technical stuff that how to do it. FMEA has different components which help us to decide that which particular area we will have to be focused on. Okay, and these risks needs to be quantified using which is severity, occurrence, and detection. Okay, severity is that how severe this failure mode is. Okay, how critical it is, wherein we give a rating of 1 to 10. Okay, if I give this failure mode as 1 as a severe rating, which means this is sometimes this is not very severe, but I give a rating of 8 to 10, which means if this failure mode happens, it's going to impact like anything. So higher the severity, the critical it is, the failure mode is the critical it is. Okay, occurrence. So when you anticipate any failure mode for any process, let's say for the same example that I've taken. So if you want to develop an application, and the first step that you have prepared is that application should be able to fetch the customer details using the mobile number. Details like the customer name, address, phone number, and his address and his location also. Okay. But let's say there is a failure mode that it doesn't accept. So I give a severity of 8 or 9 because that's very, very critical. Probably I give a 10 also. Second is occurrence. Occurrence is I would also try to anticipate that how many times it would happen on a scale of 1 to 10. How many times when the user will be mentioning his phone number, the other details will not be fetched. How many times this technical error can happen? So that is the occurrence, wherein you will again give a rating of 1 to 10. Okay. Higher the occurrence, which means this failure mode can happen a number of times. If you give an occurrence of 1 or 2, which means it can happen in a once in a blue moon. If you give it 4 or 5, it means that has come. So you have to anticipate here. Okay. Because there is no error occurred already, but we are anticipating if it happens, how many times it can happen. So it is all assumption that we are playing on. The third is detection. Okay. If this failure mode happens, for example, the same example, I'm preparing an application, the user is entering his phone number, and the details are supposed to be fetched. The details were not fetched. The severity is 9. Occurrence I gave probably 3, that this will not happen every time. And detection is how easily I will be able to detect that sort of a failure mode. Is it very difficult to detect? Is it very easy to detect? So detection is kind of an opposite. I use an Excel sheet to make you understand. So severity 1 to 10, higher the higher critical, occurrence, number of times the failure mode can happen. Okay, 1 to 10, higher the more occurrence. The last is detection. How easily will I be able to detect the failure mode? Here the rating is opposite. If you're able to detect it quite easily, okay, then you will give a rating of 8 to 9, 8, 9 or 10. But if you are not able to detect the failure mode, like you never come to know that this failure mode has happened, you did not get any sort of an error, then you would give, sorry, I've done the opposite here.
Sorry, vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa. If you're able to detect, you would give a rating of 1, 2, or 3. And if you are not able to detect, then you would give a higher rating. Because we are anticipating risk here, maybe 8 to 10. Okay. Any question on severity, occurrence, and detection? I will explain the calculation once again to you. But do we know the operational definition of severity, occurrence, and detection? Do we understand what are we trying to go for?
Can you repeat severity again?
Yeah, severity is how severe this is going to have. So example that I've taken, that if this failure mode happens, how severe it is going to impact my entire solution that I will be implementing, on the effect. Okay.
Yes, yes.
If it's going to have a huge impact, then I would give a rating of 9 or 10. If it is not going to have a huge impact, then I'd give a rating of 8 to 9. So for example, there is a step wherein I have to capture the customer secondary email ID. Secondary email ID. Okay. If that point in time, the system doesn't auto fetch, do you think it will have a huge impact? Because I already have the primary email ID. It is not that severe. My transaction will still get processed. This is just an extra information that I'm taking from the customer to ensure that if the previous email ID gets inactive, I should have a secondary one wherein I can get the OTP or something else. Okay. So in that case, this might not be very severe. Understood? I might not give it because it would not have the impact on the end result. That not huge impact. So I would probably give a 5 or 2 or 3 as a severe rating. Okay. Occurrence, how many times it can happen, this failure modes, and detection, how easy I'll be able to detect. In severity, higher the severity, the higher rating I am going to give. Occurrence, higher the occurrence, higher rating I'll be giving. In detection, it is opposite. If I'm able to detect the failure mode easily, I'll give a lower rating because that in